Welcome back to Movies Recap. Today I'm going to explain the movie A Beautiful Curse, released in the year 2021. The movie starts on a small island where a photographer named Samuel is taking pictures. He notices that many people he photographs are sleeping in different places. It turns out that the island is facing a strange crisis. 3 days ago, people began falling asleep suddenly, even while doing activities like driving, being in a sauna, or swimming. At first, everyone was confused, but they discovered that those who fell asleep wouldn't wake up, as if they were in a coma. Doctors and researchers have arrived on the island in the past 72 hours, but they haven't found a cure for this unique pandemic. All the permanent residents of the island are now asleep, some in their homes, others at work, or even in stores and cars. Their bodies are functioning normally, except that if they are moved from where they fell asleep, their pulse becomes unusually high. Interestingly, this phenomenon only affects those who were already living on the island before the crisis. Scientists have set up a camp and tagged every sleeping person to keep track of them. A woman holding a live goldfish and decides to take it with him. In this strange situation, Samuel feels like the fish is his only friend and he talks to it. They eventually find a house where they can stay for a few days. When Samuel enters, he discovers a woman named Stella sleeping in her bed. She is one of the last few people to fall asleep. Samuel respects her privacy and stays in another room, unaware that researchers are outside guarding the area. Since everyone who is conscious has been told to leave the island, he is afraid of getting punished if he is found. The next day, Samuel has a dream about going to the grocery store and running into Stella, but she doesn't pay much attention to him. He wakes up suddenly when he calls her by her name and she asks him how he knows it. A new day brings a new adventure for Samuel as he talks to a sleeping Stella while listening to the news on the radio. The whole world is talking about the pandemic and strange controversies are starting to arise. Samuel finds them funny and decides to explore the island during the day. The first person he notices is a handyman stuck to a tree, peacefully sleeping. He also discovers that the animals on the island are still alive and wonders who is taking care of them. After walking for about an hour, he reaches the church where a large group of people are unconscious. Samuel takes some pictures, finds a seat, and falls asleep. In his dream, he and Stella are sitting across from each other in a restaurant. They act like they have known each other for a long time and talk about what Samuel is doing on the island. Stella doesn't approve of him taking advantage of the situation for money, but Samuel argues that he is there for the experience, not for money. Later, he returns home and searches through Stella's belongings to find her daily journal. As he reads it, his connection to Stella grows stronger and he continues to dream about her. In the dream, she tells him that she was one of the last people to fall asleep. The first person she saw falling unconscious was her piano teacher, who fell asleep in the middle of a class. When asked if she was scared, Stella replies that she was more confused. Doctors and researchers arrive but only discovered that people shouldn't be moved from where they fell asleep. Stella finds it amusing that there is a possibility her heart might explode if she gets up from her bed. Samuel seizes the opportunity to ask her how she felt when she fell asleep. Stella describes it as a surreal feeling. She had strange and vivid dreams and eventually got lost in them, not realizing she was falling into a deep sleep. The scene shifts to the next day, and Samuel embarks on another adventure. This time, he goes to a different neighborhood and sees a car filled with balloons. While attempting to take a picture of it, he notices health workers nearby and has to run back home. This incident brings Samuel back to reality, and he decides to leave the island after taking enough pictures. He says goodbye to Stella, packs his things, and heads to the shore where his boat is. However, after spending a considerable amount of time by the shore, looking at the boat, Samuel changes his mind. Just as he reaches home, he notices that the faucet is running. Samuel remembers turning it off when he first entered the house, so he is certain he didn't leave it running. Suddenly, he is transported back to his dream, sitting across from Stella at the restaurant. She asks him about the real reason he came to the island. Samuel finally confesses that he came here for her. It turns out that a year ago, while on vacation on the island, he saw Stella at the grocery store. Intrigued by her youthful and carefree demeanor, he followed her to a restaurant later that day. Unfortunately, before he could ask for her number, the night ended and he never got to meet her again. Back in reality, Samuel goes to the grocery store to shop, but two researchers enter at the same time to get some alcohol. One of them accidentally bumps into Samuel, but he pretends to be unconscious to avoid getting caught. Once the researchers leave, he happily buys the essentials and even pays the sleeping cashier before taking the groceries home. After that, we see Samuel exploring Stella's house, observing her belongings, and imagining what her personality might be like. He strikes gold when he discovers a tape recorder in the attic containing recordings of Stella's favorite things. The list includes random items like the sound of a typewriter, headless Barbie dolls, and flamingo floaties. As Samuel listens to the recordings, his infatuation with Stella grows stronger. According to the list, Stella reveals that her favorite activity is driving on the beach. Inspired by this, Samuel envisions himself and Stella searching for a car to drive to the beach. Although he hesitates about taking a car from sleeping people, Stella convinces him that they are simply borrowing it. Eventually, they find a car they like and break into the owner's house to search for the keys. Samuel enjoys Stella's free-spirited nature and starts to believe that she is more than just a figment of his imagination. Some time later, he awakens to the sound of a car outside and notices two health workers entering the house for a weekly checkup. He quickly gathers his belongings and hides in a closet seconds before they arrive. The workers examine Stella for any abnormalities and soon leave. Samuel spends the remainder of the day lying beside Stella's bed and talking to her. The following day, he once again goes to the attic and plays the second part of Stella's tape. In the next part of the story, Stella talks about the things she dislikes and admits to feeling lonely and vulnerable. Samuel wishes he could help her feel better, but he feels powerless. Once again, he escapes into his imagination and has conversations with her. They discuss the concept of soulmates and Samuel suggests they might be each other's soulmates, but Stella doesn't believe it. Eventually, Samuel decides to go back home since he no longer has a reason to stay on the island. However, he can't bring himself to leave Stella behind and returns to her at night. He gets high on Stella's stash of drugs and dreams about them smoking together. From that day onward, Samuel dedicates himself to doing the things that were on Stella's list of favorite things. He makes lasagna and drinks beer from a wine glass, trying to connect with her. When he's tipsy, Stella appears in his dreams and expresses anger towards him for not leaving her alone. She insists that the version of herself he knows from her journals and tapes is not the real her. Samuel realizes that she is right since he has never interacted with her in real life, and their relationship exists only in his imagination. While trying to convince himself that coming to the island wasn't a mistake, Stella asks him to leave her alone and disappears. In the next scene, Samuel decides to leave once again, but this time his journey takes a different turn. He becomes extremely thirsty and experiences strange hallucinations. To quench his thirst, he breaks into an apartment, but the more he drinks, the thirstier he becomes. The walls start closing in on him, filling him with anxiety, and he realizes that he is about to fall asleep like everyone else. Desperately trying to stay awake, Samuel receives a call from imaginary Stella, who urges him to come back home. The following morning surprises Samuel when he wakes up. However, he is unsure how long he can stay awake. Seizing the opportunity, he writes notes for Stella in case she ever reads them. It takes him the entire day, and by the end, he also falls into a coma. Time passes, and after a few days, Stella stirs in her sleep. A significant moment occurs when she opens her eyes, fully awake after being asleep for over a week. She realizes that she has no energy and goes to drink water from the faucet. When Stella sees a second toothbrush on the counter, she realizes that someone else has been living with her. She approaches the sleeping Samuel in the living room with caution, feeling more confused than scared. Stella tries to wake him up but eventually gives up after a few attempts. She notices that the house is filled with random objects she likes, such as a headless Barbie doll and a giant flamingo floaty. At first, Stella is pleasantly surprised to see them, but her mood changes when she discovers that Samuel has read her journals and listened to her tapes. In a fit of anger, Stella hits Samuel multiple times and discovers the notes he wrote for her. In those notes, he apologizes for invading her privacy by listening to her tapes and assures her that she is like everyone else. He acknowledges that it's okay to feel lonely and build defenses but encourages her to be herself. The notes overwhelm Stella as she realizes that the stranger in her house knows her deeply, and she too feels a sense of familiarity with him, as if they have known each other forever. In the following days, Stella has several dreams with Samuel in them. They discuss his likes, dislikes, fears, and responsibilities, just as he did with her in his dreams. Even though they haven't met in real life, Stella believes that they are connected. As a result, she takes care of him as he did for her. Then, one morning, Stella wakes up later than usual to a pleasant surprise. Samuel is no longer on the sofa where he was sleeping. They meet in the kitchen for the first time, but their interaction feels like the reunion of long-lost lovers. Samuel introduces himself and shakes hands with Stella, both delighted to finally meet each other and realizing that they share the same happiness. In the final scene, we are taken back to the bus where it all began. The woman whose goldfish Samuel had taken wakes up from her sleep and now finds that she has 2 fishes in her hands instead of 1. Thanks for watching our recap of A Beautiful Curse. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button and subscribe for more. Leave a comment with your movie suggestions. Take care and see you next time.